Power to the people. From my second floor apartment porch, we watch the uprising of 1967 unfold. And let us not mince words about it. It was an act that brought about a lot of property destruction. You know, but at the same time, tell the other half of the story. Many of those people in those stores that were looted had been exploiting the black community for years, charging us more for goods, 2 and 3 times more than we should pay, charging us rents for substandard housing. Probably the housing was only worth a fraction of what they were charging us. So there's 2 sides to every story.
Getting through through the 7 days, there were women who stood in front of buildings, who stood in front of crowds of young people who put themselves in harm's way. And ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, we haven't given them the credit that they deserve for what they did, the role that they played.
We have this special past, and we have these memories, and we have this nostalgia. But I know so many young people who have no recollection of that at all, right? And they were born in Newark in 1985 or 1990, and in the city they were born into is a city that unfortunately was poor and violent. And so that's the reality that some people grew up with in this town. And so there's this disconnect that exists, and we talked about it, and I'm sure you all know it. There's a stark disconnect that exists between young people who are in this town right now and what this city was. And so I think it's so important that we have dialogues like this, because I think it's important that we start to bridge this divide. But I would even say, has the outcry ever really stopped, right? I would say since 1967, Newark has been fighting for its reputation. It's been fighting for its prestige. As young people have been fighting for relevance in a country where I travel across the country all the time, and there is overwhelmingly, unfortunately, negative perception of this town. People talk about what happened in 1967. They talk about what they see on the news. They talk about different things they hear. And so I would argue that there's still so much work to be done in this town. There's still so much work that we have to do.
What struck me when I came to Newark was the sense of community. When you walk around, people don't just have their nose to the ground walking by like I saw in New York so many times. People embrace each other. People say hello. People ask, how's your mother? How's your family? How are your kids? And I mean, at first that was a little shocking to me. I was like, oh wow, people really want to know about me? They want to know what I'm doing. They want to engage with me. And so I think the sense that even though there have been hard times, even though there have continued to be hard times, the fact that there's love here. There's love in this community. There's strength in this community. There's power in this community.
When I think of education and the education system, I think of working in and around the system to create change. So I think of the Amistad Act, right, that so many people, even people in this room, fought tirelessly for, so that children across the state of New Jersey could be taught black education and about the history of the African American people. Now, the enforcement of that act is a whole different question, right? But that's an example of having to work against the system to get your story taught within the system to make a change, right? But I also think of how in my college, my senior year, I was the president of the Black Student Union. And for every president of the Black Student Union, before you could host your very first meeting, before we could talk about policies and things we would fight for, we had to talk about how 12 black and brown students locked themselves in Parish Hall, our main administration hall, so that more black students could get elected, could get enrolled in the school. There could be a black studies curriculum, and so that black students wouldn't have a book not unlike this, of their GPAs, their SAT scores, and their family incomes on display in our main library for the whole campus to see. That was how the Black Culture Center that we had our meetings in every day came about.
When Thomas Jefferson envisioned the public school, initially he was envisioning it for people who think critically. And then the Carnegies and the Rockefellers got involved and started teaching, or they influenced curriculum so that we're not teaching for philosophers, we're teaching for people to work. we've evolved to a point where now, and I haven't gone to Central High School, it may not have been the best high school, but we were allowed to think and figure out things. And I would have never gone to high school, never gone to law school if it wasn't the fact that we were allowed to think and no one was trying to think for us. So we have to understand, whoever controls our children's minds controls our culture and our economy.